Now, Lance Stroll has put himself in the negative spotlight yet again after his shenanigans in China, and it seems like there are no intentions for him to improve his racecraft in order to keep his seat safe. Be that as it may, the situations are slowly but surely changing in the Silverstone-based squad, and with Honda knocking on the door, it could very well mean that there are circumstances under which Lance won't race for Aston Martin in the foreseeable future. But after everything we saw in China, is it finally time to pull the curtain on Stroll, and is Aston Martin stuck in an infinite loophole with the Canadian driver still present in the team? It goes without saying that Lance is one of the worst drivers on the grid right now, and he's proving that race after race with the fact that he has one of the best cars on the grid that's capable of scoring points on a consistent matter. But he only has 9 right now, more than 3 times less than his teammate Alonso, who sits at 31. Although it's hard to compete with a 2-time world champion, not slamming your car in the rear end of your rivals would be good for a start, and that's exactly what Lance has done in China, causing terminal damage to Ricciardo's diffuser and causing him to retire the car prematurely. On top of that, this caused a chain reaction that saw Ricciardo hit Piastri from the back, but due to the hit not being nearly as powerful as the one he felt from Stroll, the young Aussie was able to continue the race, only for him to be passed by Alonso on fresher tyres at the closing stages of the race. A damage limitation race for Piastri and terminal damage for Ricciardo is what Stroll caused in just one corner, and the penalty was 10 seconds, which he served in the pit stop. To make things even more frustrating, he said it was not deserved at all, but we'll get to that later in this video. First, Stroll's accusations towards Ricciardo that he kind of withdrew afterward and tried to blame it on whoever braked the first have made Ricciardo's blood boil, as he went on to say, "It's a restart of the race, and you know we don't know what the leader is going to do, so you have to be as vigilant as ever and be prepared for any situation. I could see it was bunching up into the hairpin, so obviously everyone is backing up. But then how hard has he hit me and basically put half his car under mine? It was not small like a judgment error. He was miles off. For that, for me, there is obviously no excuse. I think for me what is frustrating is I watched his onboard and he's not even looking at me. You can see his helmet and he's looking at the apex of the corner. So I don't know why he's not looking at the car in front, unless you're doing something funny with your eyes. And apparently I'm an idiot and it was my fault, so that made my blood boil. Crashing a car under the safety car is definitely a hugely bizarre incident, and when you think about it, you cannot help but wonder, how in the world did Stroll manage to pull that off? According to the Canadian driver, the fault is to be looked at someplace else, such as the driver who slammed on the brakes after going 60 km per hour. But when Piastri was being told about this view of Stroll, he said that all of the drivers braked, but none of them slammed into each other, hinting towards the fact that it was pure poor judgment from Stroll and lack of attention. However, with the luxury that Stroll has of racing in his father's team, it's safe to assume that these situations are not going to affect him at all. Even the team went on to stand behind him and defend the Canadian driver by saying that the penalty he received is too harsh and was brought on in a quick manner. When talking about this situation, Lance went on to say, "I think I got the penalty because of the fact that I hit the guy. I got a penalty because of the end result that I hit Ricciardo, but it's not like everything was normal and I just slammed into the back of him. There was a really odd concertina effect that I would have liked to see the stewards take into consideration maybe a little bit more. Someone braked at the front of the pack and then everyone stops. The car in front of me just stopped from like 60 to 0. It was one of those stupid incidents. I was in Ricciardo's gearbox and ready for the restart, and just very unlucky. We were having a good race, so then it was a shame." Now, definitely the reaction from Stroll could have been much better, but according to Mike Crack, you cannot really blame the Canadian driver, because had he reacted a bit slower than what he did, then he would have lost a car's length and then would have lost track position to the car behind. So many people would have blamed him for the poor restart. Be that as it may, the future of Aston Martin lies with Lance Stroll. At least that's what Mike Crack is saying, and he has no intention of giving up on the project just because of all the negative comments surrounding the young Canadian driver. When talking about the future of Lance, Mike said, "Last week the news were mainly about Fernando, but we also know that Aston Martin is Lance's home. We know that, and the whole project has always been around him, so we look for continuity. I've always said that's very important, so we'll see in the next weeks." But if Aston Martin is really looking for continuity, then they might be looking at the wrong place. This is the type of driver that you don't want to build your future around, especially due to the nepotistic relationship that's present between him and the owner of the team, Lawrence Stroll. The public statements of the Canadian billionaire said that as long as he owns the team, there is absolutely no need for Lance to be scared about his seat. That was, however, until the entire landscape in Aston Martin changed and they're aiming to no longer be perceived as Mercedes' customer team, even though they're performing at a similar level to the Silver Arrows right now. With the independence process started by the new projects in Silverstone, led by the wind tunnel and CFD facilities, Aston Martin have continued this journey by signing an engine deal with Honda from 2026 onwards. This means that once Honda gives up on Red Bull in 2025, they would hop in a team in which they hope to continue the winning streak, which is what was started by Koji Watanabe, who's the director of Honda F1. This is one of the primary reasons why Fernando Alonso continued the collaboration with Aston Martin, because Honda have convinced him that the 2017 issues that they both endured in McLaren are a thing in the past now. And if there is one thing that they would be working towards, it's championships in both categories. But with the 2026 regulations set to shake up the entire grid, it's safe to say that Ferrari, Red Bull and Mercedes won't be standing still. Quite the contrary, they'll be looking forward to exploiting the maximum out of their own engines in order to prove the world that they have what it takes to change the narrative that is currently present in the sport. Aston Martin's story will be one of the most interesting to witness because we're going to see what was Honda's influence in the entire success of the 2022 regulated era of Red Bull, and whether or not it was primarily due to the downforce requirements of the car rather than the engine. Be that as it may, Lance Stroll is definitely going to be under a lot of pressure because unlike Mercedes, the team that's currently supplying Aston Martin with engines and will continue to do so in the upcoming year, Honda cares a lot about who drives in the team, and that was stated by Koji Watanabe. He also stated that the ultimate goal for Honda and Aston Martin would be to find the perfect duo of drivers that would lead them to the Constructors' Championship, which to be fair is quite impossible if you look at Lance's performance right now and the lack of professionalism he has. Therefore, Tsunoda's name has been one of the loudest in the paddock, and with his latest performance in the Racing Bulls, one couldn't help but note that there is a very big change that the Japanese manufacturer will pursue Aston Martin to make a big and dramatic change if they are to collaborate in a longer term deal. This would be further emphasized if Honda's importance in Aston Martin's success is much bigger than originally anticipated. And all of this begs one question: is Lance Stroll the right fit for Aston Martin, and will Lawrence pay the ultimate price of being stuck in the midfield by not letting go of his son? So what's your take on this entire situation? Let us know in the comments down below.